Hey, Father Michael here. John chapter 11, verses 25 and 26. I'm thinking about this story of the raising of Lazarus. Next Saturday in the Eastern churches is known as Lazarus Saturday. It's a significant day for me for a lot of reasons. I'll probably talk more about that next week. But verses 25 and 26 in chapter 11 of John's Gospel, Jesus said to Martha, I am the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, will live. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? He asks her. So, we were living in a big old historic house, a big old Queen Anne, in an historic neighborhood not far from Notre Dame campus. And the yard was overgrown and just crazy with trees and all kinds of weeds and untrimmed bushes. And so it took, goodness, a year to get everything cleaned up and gardens planted and all of that. And I had planted, in addition to some other things, I had planted along the back of the house a whole bunch of moonflowers or night blooming jasmine, whatever you want to call those things. They're like a viney, low growing shrub like plant that blooms only at night. And so I planted these, thrown in some seeds along the back of the house and around the concrete stoop that led into the back door. And on a warm summer night, with the fire pit fully stocked and burning, and no breeze or wind of any kind, the dog, kind of curled up at my feet, and the kids just for once sitting and shutting up and sitting in the silence, in the warm temps. It was very cool to realize that those flowers had magically opened while we were not paying attention, and they were releasing their rather distinctive, kind of spicy scent. And once those plants get established, they really are very low maintenance. They tend to reseed themselves, and you don't have to do a darn thing except enjoy them when the warm weather returns. And then came the house fire. So I was working a part-time job in the evening, and I got the call at work from the neighbor woman that the house was on fire, but that my son, who was the only one home at the time with the dog, my son and the dog had escaped and that they were both safe. But the fire trucks were there, she said, and I probably needed to come home. Well, of course, I about had a heart attack, and now I'm driving in a panic through town. And when I pulled up, I couldn't tell at first what had really happened because it was dark. The fire was evidently already extinguished, but the trucks were still there with the lights and all of that. The house seemed to be standing and intact, I thought. So I thought, well, okay, all right, this is going to be okay. But when I walked into the house and saw all the damage, yikes. I almost literally fainted with the shock of it. And the fireman in charge literally caught me because I was falling backwards like in a dead faint. The antique wallpaper in the dining room and in the parlor had been burned off, the top half of the room. The lace curtains, of course, gone, burned, just shards of black fabric hanging. The leaded glass windows in all of the rooms destroyed, broken, mostly by the firemen who used their handy little axes to chop through the windows. The maple floors and the hand-carved staircase leading up to the second floor, completely soaked, saturated with water. There's water standing everywhere. The stench of a burned house is unlike any other stench. I will never forget it. But even in my shock, I said to the fireman, well, I guess it could have been worse. And he said, come with me. And he took me, opened the pocket door into the kitchen, and there I saw the worst of it. The back wall of the house had basically collapsed. The back porch was gone. Part of the wall in the kitchen was gone. And I could literally see the night stars through the holes in the missing walls. Everything in that kitchen had been destroyed except for 10 china dinner plates that I had been given by my grandmother as a wedding present. Like I said, my son and the dog, Ebony, had managed to escape, but the dog, who was a rescue animal and already a nervous wreck, hearing and seeing the flashing lights and the strangers and the sirens and all of that, she had simply panicked and bolted, taken off somewhere for parts unknown. No one knew where she was. And the neighbors who lived behind us, I hadn't even met them yet, came out to greet us and offer me and my son lodging at their house for however long we needed to stay there. There are still good people in this world. And neighbors from all over, people again that I hadn't even met, showed up with ladders and tools and sheets of plywood to seal up the house so that looters wouldn't break in and take, whatever had survived the fire. So after an adventurous, stressful night of all of that business, everything is buttoned up, everything is secure, and we go over to the neighbor's house, my son Phil and I, and we shower and go to bed. Well, needless to say, neither one of us could sleep. And I remember just laying there with my eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling, thinking, what do I need to do? Who do I need to call? Who's the insurance company? Did those papers survive? Etc., etc. All of that kind of stressful stuff. And about 2:30 in the morning, it was summertime, remember? And so the window was open. I heard through the open bedroom window the sounds of our dog, Ebony, crying. So I went to the window and looked out, and there she was, sitting on the concrete stoop that used to lead into the back door, but that didn't even exist anymore. It was literally just a stoop in some charred rubble. And she was pawing at where the door should have been, completely confused, and I just cried. And so the whole thing hit me at that point. And so I made my way out of the house crying, made my way across the alley to get my dog, and God love those people, Pam and Jim. They also heard the commotion, and they were kind enough to allow me to bring Ebony into their home as well. But as I made my way over to collect my dog, those night blooming jasmine flowers were doing their thing. They were still blooming. They were still releasing their amazing, spicy scent into the night air for no one to enjoy, continuing to do what all creation does. Just keeping on living, keeping on, trying to thrive, even in dire situations, even when no one notices. There is a lesson for me in that memory, because it is evidently true that life goes on. Not in the sense that we put the past out of our minds and we forget our histories and we forget the people who have come into our stories and changed us for the better and all of that. It's not about forgetting. Life goes on in the sense that the urge to survive and thrive, that evolutionary drive put into everything in the universe, that continues to be a reality. Life does not give up. Think about it, those of you who are homeowners. Those little weeds and sprigs of grass, by golly, they will find their way into any little crack in your pavement. Those dandelions will find their way into your lawn that even the crustiest old man in the neighborhood cannot control. Those night blooming flowers are going to continue to bloom for no other reason other than to honor the creator of life, whose ancient command from the very beginning was very simple: be fruitful, multiply. And the whole creation is continually heeding that call. It doesn't always feel good living in this life. But the truth is, God is constantly inviting us to renewal. There are times when life is just hard, period. But when we are overcome with our troubles and our sadness and our challenges, we can still choose to hold on to our trust in God. The next season of our life is already in process. It's already on the way. And when we're afraid somehow that we have missed an opportunity for growth, or we're experiencing delays, or when we feel like our prayers just are not being answered the way we want, we always have the hope and the reality that new life is real, is constantly in process. We are rooted in God. God is the ground of our being, the ground of everything that is. And life always wins, even when it feels differently. Pray with me. Mighty, ever-living, ever life-giving God, we come into your divine, holy presence in this moment of prayer, grateful for all the times you have shown us the lesson that life is always victorious. Help us today, wherever we are in our journey to you, to see evidence of life overcoming challenges. Help us to look for the tiny blades of grass in the cracks in the pavement, the tiny weeds already beginning to grow in our lawns. Perhaps even the sweet scent of blossoms already beginning to take shape and to come to fruition within our own hearts. For all of those you have sent us to teach us lessons, we thank you. In our turn, help us today to be willing to be a teacher to others, an example, evidence of the truth that life always wins. Amen. God bless you today.